kufanya kitu hapa, ujenge nyumba ama ununue gari, watu wa KWS wanaona tu atunaingia kwa msitu.
I think it's important that actually they don't hang on to that notion.
Akasema hao ni afisa wa polisi, nifugue. Mimi sikufugua.
Tunaona kuna nyao iko kwa mlango. Hii nyao iko kwa mlango hii. Hii ndio alifuja nayo. Kagonga akafuja akaingia.
Bilangu tu anisaidie nijue kweli.
In early July 2016, human rights activists and Kenya's entire legal fraternity were shaken by the murders of 32-year-old human rights lawyer Willie Kimani, his client, 27-year-old motorcycle operator Josphat Mwenda, and their taxi driver, 23-year-old Josphat Muiruri. Josphat was pursuing a case in court where he had been shot by a police officer, then had drugs planted on him, and got arrested when he refused to drop his complaint. Willie was his lawyer. Joseph picked them up from a courthouse on the outskirts of the city and were driving back to Nairobi when they were stopped and arrested by the police. They were never seen alive again. This protest came shortly after their bodies were fished out of this river, the Oldonyo Sabuk Kilimambogo River, one from which the bodies of people suspected to have been murdered have often been found. An autopsy showed that the three had been badly tortured before they were murdered.
If we as lawyers don't stand up against this, then we condone it.
This is the first protest that's taking place right in the heart of Nairobi's capital, in the CBD, specifically about extrajudicial killings. But the truth of the matter is that many of these deaths have gone unreported and unrecognized by the wider Kenyan public because of where they happened. Willie Kimani's death represents something to people who have been untouched by extrajudicial killings. But the real murders, the many murders that have taken place, started at the margins of Kenyan society.
In Mandera County and the 3 counties of northern Kenya, the allegations of enforced disappearances are far more than many other places in Kenya. But because this county borders Somalia and in recent times has been the stage for brutal murders perpetrated by terror group the Al-Shabaab, these allegations have fallen on the country's largely deaf ears. But on December the 8th, 2015, residents hoped that their cries would be heard in evidence presented from beyond the grave. Tens of people from Mandera town stood in groups and waited as the body of 32-year-old Isnina Musa Sheikh, which had been found days before in a shallow grave, was being dug up for an autopsy. Every spade that hit the earth gave residents hope that they would be heard this time around. In the crowd, human rights activists were also betting on this as a smoking gun.
For us, in terms of chain of custody, this is the closest to really closing the gap in terms of linking the families to the victims and to the perpetrators.
What would that liquid? It's called purging. It's coming from the abdomen.
Pathologist Dr. Dixon Mchana was on hand to do the autopsy as quickly as possible, and they chose a hut at the edge of Isnina's burial site to do it from. Almost as soon as her corpse was out of the ground, convoys of 4-wheel drives raised dust in the sweltering afternoon, heading to Omar Jilo, where Isnina's body had been found, because there were allegations that she was buried in an area that had a mass grave. Once again that afternoon, hopes rose and fell with every shovel that hit the ground. as friends and relatives of dozens of missing persons searched for the one place that they half suspected their loved ones would be, in the ground. It would not be the first time that a mass grave had been found in northern Kenya. Just 7 months earlier, and 350 kilometers away in Wajir County, a mass grave was discovered by members of the public. The people who stumbled onto the grave also found spent cartridges believed to be similar to those used by security agencies. Residents also reported seeing vehicles belonging to the Kenya Defence Forces in the vicinity.
There is no doubt that what is a sensational campaign by some senior politician is of a sinister political agenda aimed at painting our security agencies and government in negative light.
This day in Mandera would be different.
Utanzua ile sura ambayo ilikuwa tayari imepeanwa katika vyombo vya habari tangu juzi ya kwamba hii sehemu ya Lethi kuna makaburi ambayo inatuhumiwa imebeba miili zaidi ya 12, lakini kufikia hivi sasa jinsi mmeshuhudia nyinyi wote ni mwili mmoja tu wa yule mama ambao uliweza kufukuliwa hapa.
The fact that there were no other graves found there was used by the government as evidence that human rights activists were stoking fears based on rumors. Some members of parliament from the region were arrested following their claims. As for Isnina, her death was filed under the shroud of terrorism. Her kidnapping and murder was linked to the Al-Shabaab. Never mind the fact that she was bundled into a white probox at midday on the day she disappeared, according to eyewitnesses at the market where she cooked. They also claimed that a Kenya Defence Forces armored personnel carrier parked at the edge of the market drove off as soon as the kidnapping had taken place. What would make her case even more difficult to mark as a case of extrajudicial execution was the fact that none of these witnesses ever came forward. One hope remained: her autopsy. Isnina died as a result of a heavy blow to the head. Whether it was officers of the government that were responsible would be too much of an assumption to make.
When you say torture, you are saying law enforcement agent, because these are people who are mandated by the Constitution. When a police officer stops you, you stop because they are allowed by law to stop you.
The unresolved nature of Isnina's death made it difficult for many to give any credence to allegations from human rights activists that there were state-sanctioned kidnappings and executions being perpetrated there. But for the many faces that searched the ground for their loved ones in Mandera, even an acknowledgement that dozens were missing would not be granted.